From the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia is a mecca for outdoor travel and adventure. Virginia Outdoor Adventures podcast is the ultimate guide for local outdoor recreation, including hiking, camping, kayaking, local travel, and so much more. Get the information and the inspiration to plan your own adventure right here in Virginia. I'm your host, Jessica Bowser. Welcome to a brand new season of Virginia Outdoor Adventures. In this trailer episode, you'll get a sneak peek of what's to come in Season 5. Upcoming fall festivals and events where you can meet me in person. Giveaways for podcast merch and a $50 gift card to River Rock Outfitter. New features such as fan mail texting and shout outs to my listeners. Let's go. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is sponsored by Breaks Interstate Park. Breaks Park is a hiking destination in the heart of Appalachia. Every trail features something that will awe you, including geologic formations, scenic views of the canyon, stream crossings, and wildlife viewing. Trails range from easy to difficult. The convenience of lodges, campgrounds, and luxury cabins inside the park means you'll never need to wander far from the trail. Come see for yourself why Breaks is known as the Grand Canyon of the South. Download the digital trail guide at breakspark.com or click on Breaks Interstate Park in the show notes of your listening app. Hello, friends. Welcome to Season 5 of Virginia Outdoor Adventures podcast. Can you even believe that we're in Season 5? Well, you probably can, but I still have moments when I can't wrap my head around the fact that this podcast started as a pandemic project, and here we are all these years later. I'm still making content and you all are still listening, which I think is just amazing. But thank you so much to all of you who have been following along. For those of you who are new, I really hope that you find value in this podcast and a sense of community and an appreciation for all of the beautiful assets that we have right here in Virginia. What is new this season? Well, first of all, these solo episodes are new. For those of you who have been listening, you know that in the past, I almost always have a guest on a new episode, and I have never done solo episodes before. So this is definitely new for me. This was a suggestion from my editor who has been urging me for at least a year or more now to start doing solo episodes. And I will admit, I've been a little bit resistant. I have never felt that this podcast was about me. I have always felt that the podcast should be first and foremost for the listeners, but then in a close second, also about the guests. And I never wanted to be the center of attention, but my editor made a really good case for why I should consider doing some solo episodes, including the fact that I now have a place to include content that didn't have a place before. So I can talk about news and updates, festivals that are coming up around Virginia or other events you might want to attend. I can answer fan mail. That's a new feature this season that I will talk about in just a moment. There's a place for me to share things that I have done that before I was only sharing on social media, and it didn't really have a place on the podcast. So now I have occasional episodes where I can share different forms of content that I think might appeal to all of you. So I'm going to give this a shot. I will just say now I reserve the right to go back to the guest formats that I was doing before if I feel like this isn't working or if I'm not getting great feedback from the listeners. I would love to hear from you what you think about this new format, and that'll help me decide what I'm going to do moving forward. So what else has been going on? You probably noticed that I took a break from social media this summer. It's the first time that I have taken a break from social media in 4 years. Up until now, I have been posting regularly on weekends, on holidays, when I've been on travel, in between seasons. I have literally scheduled my vacations around posting social media content, even when I've been overseas. And so to take that break, I mean, let's just say I didn't even realize how badly I needed it. And I didn't even really plan it. I actually had planned to continue posting all summer long. And things got so busy that I couldn't keep up with it. And I finally decided just to give myself a break. And it's probably the best decision I've ever made. So here's what's been going on. After the last episode of the season back in May, I immediately took a vacation. I went out to Utah. My gosh, you guys, if you have not been out to Utah, it was not my first trip to Utah. It's actually, I think, my third. But every time I go out there, I just fall in love all over again. It is such an incredible state. So I flew into Salt Lake City and arrived just in time for the Great Salt Lake Bird Festival, which I didn't plan. It just happened to fall that way. It's a huge annual festival that they have there every year, and was on a bird walk by like 7 a.m. the morning after my flight landed. I got 57 species on that bird walk, including 2 lifers, Clark's grebe and dusky flycatcher. And I was the person in the group who found the dusky flycatcher, which was super exciting because our guide was unbelievable. I mean, so experienced, just an incredible birder, and 20-something people in the group. And I was the one who heard the dusky flycatcher. So I was pretty proud of myself for that. Also visited Antelope Island, which, if you're not familiar, is literally an island in the middle of the Great Salt Lake. And the wildlife opportunities there are incredible. There's bison, there's bighorn sheep, mule deer, pronghorn, which is just another name for antelope, porcupines, and then one of my favorites, the western meadowlark. And you might be familiar with the eastern meadowlark, which is a bird that we have here in Virginia. It's maybe robin size, maybe a little bit bigger. You don't see them very often, but when you do, they're usually foraging on the ground in an open field. They have striking bright yellow feathers with some black patterns on them and a gorgeous song. The western meadowlark looks almost identical, but its range is entirely out west, pretty much. And the eastern meadowlark you can mostly find here on the East Coast. Their ranges do overlap a little bit around the Great Lakes, but for the most part, you can tell which one it is just based on where you are. And there is no overlap in Utah. So it's all western meadowlarks out there. And the island is full of them. And they have this gorgeous, like, robotic song, and they will perch on top of rocks, and you'll just see them singing their hearts out. So in addition to being on this island with all this wildlife and these gorgeous singing birds, you're surrounded by water. You can see Salt Lake City sort of built into the side of a mountain from the island. And then beyond that, you've got snow-capped mountains. It is absolutely stunning. The other thing I think is really interesting about the place is that it attracts migratory waterfowl, and the water surrounding the island, so the Great Salt Lake, is just loaded with what they call rafts of birds. And these are mostly ducks and other waterfowl, but hundreds of thousands of them everywhere. It's amazing. That was incredible. And then from there, I went on to Moab. I visited Arches National Park, Canyonlands National Park, Dead Horse Point State Park. Actually got some recommendations from some of my listeners who have been out there before. Like I said, I've been to Utah, but I hadn't been to Moab. And so for those of you who sent me recommendations, thank you so much. Most of you I've already followed up with to say that I did hike some of the trails that you all recommended. Moab is an incredible outdoor adventure town, and it gets tons of visitors every year. People move to Moab because of the outdoor adventure there. So finding solitude can be a little tough, but I did manage to find it and had an epic trip. The canyons, the desert. I'm just in love with the desert. I think that's why I love Utah so much. The desert is absolutely amazing. The red and orange cliffs, the sand, it's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to get off my soapbox for a second and get back to Virginia here in a moment. But I did some hiking, some birding, some off-roading, even wildlife watching. On the way back, stopped in Park City, which is primarily a ski town, but in May there wasn't skiing, so it was relatively empty, which was nice. I had this really interesting experience in Park City. We were going out to dinner and we drove over to the Main Street area, and I parked my car on the street, sort of at the top of a hill where the retail section sort of turned into like a neighborhood, like, homes. And I get out of the car, and as I'm closing the door, I see something move quickly past me. And I turn my head in time to see this juvenile moose just trotting down the middle of Main Street. And he looked like he was on a mission. I don't know where he was going, but he had someplace he was going. And he was just running down the middle of the street. And it happened so quickly that I was like in complete shock. I started to reach for my camera, and he was already gone. And And so I just stood there and watched as all of these tourists just started pouring out into the street from the sidewalks as he ran by, everybody trying to get a photo and a video. It was like really funny. But my favorite memory from Utah, actually, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's on the top of the list. So I was looking for hikes and found this little local park that I think is relatively unknown by the tourists because it seemed to be just locals there. And it's an old farm, and I was walking around, and you've probably heard me say on this podcast before that one of my nemesis birds is a golden eagle. And if you don't know what a golden eagle is, it's kind of similar to our bald eagles that we have here in Virginia, except that it has a solid dark brown body, which kind of looks black when it's flying. And its head feathers, instead of being white, it has golden head feathers like around the base of its neck, and it does not have a white tail. They are here in Virginia, but they're very rare. They usually move through here in the winter. This isn't really their range. They're mostly common out west, but occasionally we do have them come through here in Virginia, and I have over the years been trying to see one like over and over again. And every time one is spotted and I show up looking for it, it's usually long gone. So I have been wanting to see a golden eagle for ages. And I was walking through this park. It was getting close to sunset, and I was heading back to my car, and I looked up towards the mountain, and I just saw this black dot sort of soaring over the horizon. And I was like, what is that? And so I'm like standing in one spot in this field, watching. And it was pretty far off in the distance. But as soon as it turned and the angle of the setting sun sort of illuminated it, I could see those gorgeous golden feathers on its neck. And I was so excited. I was like jumping up and down in this wildflower covered field with nobody else around, almost ready to cry because it was so beautiful. And then to just make it even better, it circled all the way around me and continued to circle around me for like the next half an hour before it eventually disappeared over the mountain. Oh my gosh, like what a moment. I couldn't have been happier. At that point, I could have gone home. If I hadn't seen anything else, it would have been the trip of a lifetime. But it actually wasn't the end of the show. I got back to my car. I was pulling out onto the road, or actually I was stopped just about to pull out on the road. And I saw what I swear to you looked like a dinosaur fly right over my car and land back over where I had just been walking. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? I threw the car in reverse, parked it again, grabbed my pack, ran back towards the trail and start looking around, and found a sandhill crane waiting in this like reed-filled ditch near the side of the road. I can't think of a better way to describe it. And it was just walking around. And yes, we have sandhill cranes here in Virginia too, but again, you don't see them very often. They usually fly over during migration. If you live on the Eastern Shore, you might see them a little more frequently. But for those of us who don't live out there, like you just don't see them very often. There are these huge birds, gosh, like almost as tall as me. Well, not quite. I am a shorty too. But they are really tall birds. They're gray. They have these bright red head feathers. They're cranes. They're huge. And so this guy's walking around in the pond, and I'm like enjoying it. And then he like sort of jumps up and hops over to the other side of the pond, and I see there's another one, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's two. I wonder if they're a mating pair. And so they're sort of walking around, and then I realize that the second one is picking up sticks and carrying them back to a nest that she had built in the middle of the pond. There was just like, I mean, imagine Big Bird's nest from Sesame Street. That's kind of what it looked like, this huge pile of sticks. And she's rearranging all the sticks, and then I see something moving, and I realize that they have a baby. And this little thing is like this little puff ball, and it's walking around in between its mother's legs. And then the female sits down on the nest, and the baby jumps up on the mother's back and buries itself in between its wings and goes to sleep. And it was unbelievable. And I'm just standing there freezing at this point because the sun had set, and I'm taking like 1,000 pictures and just enjoying every moment until I couldn't tolerate the cold or taking more pictures because it was so dark. Oh my God. Like I'm like texting my husband saying, okay, I know I said I was going to be back an hour ago, but this dinosaur flew over my car and I'm going to be late. Utah steals my heart every time. Absolutely amazing. Discover river life in the charming, picturesque towns of Middlesex County in the heart of Virginia's river realm. The moment I arrived in Middlesex, I was swept into the river lifestyle. The highlights of my relaxing visit were trying my luck at casting a line and topping, holding on to my hat on a charter boat ride in Deltaville, and paddling into the sunset in Urbana. Whether you prefer waterfront camping or chic lodging, Middlesex County has something for everyone. I enjoyed the mix of vintage and modern furnishings and luxurious amenities of the Chesapeake Inn in Urbana. Dining options abound in Middlesex. Family-owned local establishments are the heart of Middlesex communities. I recommend the Mediterranean coastal cuisine of Prime Mediterranean and the raw oysters and waterfront dining of Marar in Topping, plus the chill vibe of fire pits and food truck at Small Town Burger in Urbana. Don't miss the annual Urbana Oyster Festival this November 1st and 2nd. With food, live music, local vendors, and of course, lots of oysters, this is an event you'll want to experience for yourself. Planning a trip to Middlesex County is easy with the new Explore Middlesex app. I used the app to choose the dining, lodging, attractions, and outdoor adventures I wanted to experience and added them to my plan. Info, location, and directions were right at my fingertips each step of my visit. Learn more about Middlesex County in episode 58, or click on Explore Middlesex in your show notes to download the app and start planning your river trip today. I was really honored to be invited by Senator Tim Kaine to join him on a part of his book tour. You might remember episode 57, which came out in April, was featuring Senator Kaine and his new book, Walk, Ride, Paddle, which was all about his epic journey riding his bike down the Skyline Drive and the Blue Ridge Parkway, also hiking the length of the Appalachian Trail, and then paddling the entire distance of the James River, which is an incredible journey that he wrote a book about. He's been on the podcast twice talking about not only his journey, but about what he learned along the way about Virginia. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy hosted a live event with Senator Kaine and asked me to moderate. So I actually did that from my hotel room in Moab, which was really fun. I still need to share that video. It's something I should have shared a long time ago, but being on a social media break, I just never got to it. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I'm doing some major house renovation projects, things that I've been putting off for 4 years that I finally just dove into. And part of the motivation behind that too was that I had a visit from my cousin and her boyfriend who were here from Austria, and I wanted to get those house projects done before their arrival. So I did that. My cousin Larissa came. It was incredible to have her and her boyfriend here. It was their first trip to the U.S. They could not tolerate the heat and humidity of Virginia, which was kind of funny. And I had told her before she came that she was coming during the hottest time of the year. It was July. And she was like, yes, I know. You've told me over and over it's hot. I get it. But I'm a teacher and this is my only time that I have to travel. So it is what it is. And I was like, okay. I didn't want to keep lecturing her. And I was a teacher myself, so I totally get it. But I also wanted to make sure she knew what she was getting into. And for somebody who lives in Austria and has the cool mountain breeze and no humidity, and you still have to wear a sweater at night, even in the middle of summer, it's kind of hard to convey what a Virginia summer is like. And they got here, and wow, I'll just say they definitely had a hard time adjusting. I think every single day for the first week they were here, they looked absolutely miserable. I actually felt kind of bad for them, but we did manage to enjoy ourselves. We went up to New York City for one weekend. While we were there, we went to the Statue of Liberty and then over to Ellis Island. And part of that trip was because I have been trying to find my grandparents' immigration records for years. There is a website that the Ellis Island Foundation has where you can search for your relatives' names, and the ship manifest will usually come up if there's a match. And I've never been able to find a match, which didn't make sense to me because I knew they came over and I knew when they came over, and obviously I know their names. So decided to go and actually get some help. So Larissa and I went, and we're standing at the counter, and this woman is doing these searches for me and searching, all kinds of different other databases that they had access to as well. And then she goes, I see what the problem is here. Someone misspelled your grandmother's name. Someone spelled her name Josepha, and my grandmother's name is Josephine. I was like, well, that's strange. And then Larissa says, oh, she used her German name. And I was like, sorry, what? And she's like, her German name. Josepha's her name in German. And I was like, I've never heard my grandmother call herself Josepha. It was either Josephine or Pipsa. And Larissa said, well, yeah, Josephine is her English name and Pipsa is her Slovenian name, but Josepha is her German name. And I was completely dumbfounded. But once we had her name, then we were able to find the ship manifest, and something similar with my grandfather's name too. In English, his name was Frank, or in Slovenian, it was France. But on the manifest, it was listed as France. And so that was just totally baffling to me. But I did finally manage to get my hands on those records. And it was really cool to have my cousin there during that, because her grandfather is or was my grandmother's sibling. So we share the same great grandparents. And it was really awesome to have her there, to be a part of that special moment. Was really, really cool. We also did get an opportunity to do some hiking here in Virginia. My cousin's a big hiker. As you can imagine, if you live in Austria, you've got the Alps there. And she lives right near the border of Slovenia, which is the village where my grandmother is from. And that area is ethnically, or has been ethnically, Slovenian, but since World War II, politically became part of Austria. And so it's like this mix of the two cultures. They're right on the border with the Julian Alps. And so there's amazing hiking opportunities. It's absolutely gorgeous there. It's completely stunning. And so she's a big hiker and wanted to do some hikes here. So we went to a Virginia winery, and then we went out to Shenandoah National Park. Many of you sent me your hike recommendations for where we should go if we only had one day. So thank you so much for all of you who did that. We did end up doing some shorter hikes in Shenandoah because the heat and humidity was just like unbearable. And I just have to say, I don't think they were very impressed with Virginia's mountains or our wine here. But what can you expect, right? If you're from Austria. So I'm not going to take offense to any of it. But we did have a very lovely day. I also celebrated my birthday in July with Larissa and her boyfriend, because they also had birthdays coming up. So it was really cool to do that right before they headed back to Austria. And then I went up to Shenandoah National Park to do some hiking there. Folks, if you have not heard of the Country View Lodging, I would highly recommend it. It's near Elkton, or actually, I think its mailing address might actually be Elkton, near the southern part of the national park. Really cute lodging. And for the price, like seriously, you can't go wrong. It's right at the base of the mountain, and they have some really nice rooms. They also have cabins, which are actually more like tiny houses. And the rates are just excellent. So between the proximity and how cheap it is, I would highly recommend this place. I would say tell all of your friends, but then it might not be so cheap anymore. So if you're planning a trip, and for me, because I live in Northern Virginia, I'm in the north part and the central part of the park a lot, but I often don't make it down to the southern park. So whenever I stay somewhere, I try to go down to the southern part of the park and check out some trails and things down there that I don't usually get to see and do because I don't live that close, a few hours away from up here. The day before my birthday, I had my first copperhead sighting in Prince William Forest National Park. I was walking down the trail past this old hollowed out tree stump, and I just sort of looked over the edge, and there was this juvenile copperhead sleeping inside. And folks, for all of the hiking that I do and the traveling around the state, I cannot believe it took until now for me to finally see a copperhead. And it was gorgeous. I was in love. Just beautiful. It was an amazing experience. I get so excited when I see things that I haven't seen before. And I've had like copperhead jealousy or FOMO, I think, for years. People seeing snakes that I've never seen before, or even any sort of wildlife that I haven't gotten to see before. So it was really cool to see that. And then when I was in Shenandoah National Park, I was leaving the park one night driving down the road, and I drove past what I thought was a stick in the road. And then I thought, what if that's not a stick? And I turned around and saw it moving, and I'm like, oh, it's a snake. I have to help it across the road. And I put on my hazards and I jumped out of the car and I walked up to it to sort of try to help shoo it off the road, and saw that Hershey Kiss pattern on it and realized that that was another copperhead. And I was like, what are the odds after not seeing any ever that I see 2 in 1 week? That was a close one. I had to back off and wait. And I sat in my car for like 15 minutes hoping nobody was going to drive by, and nobody did until it finally got off the road. I'm like, who else does this, by the way? Like, if you do this, please let me know, because it would make me feel better. Not that I'm embarrassed, but it's almost like, am I the only person who sits in my car for 15 minutes helping a snake across the road? I don't know. Maybe there's others like me. If you are one of those people, connect with me. I'd love to talk about it. Imagine taking in the expansive views of the Shenandoah Valley, hiking to one of the few remaining fire towers east of the Mississippi, or walking in the footsteps of thru hikers along the Appalachian Trail. Now lace up your hiking boots and head to Harrisonburg, an ideal base camp for your outdoor adventure. If you're a regular listener of the show, you've probably heard me share some of my many epic adventures in and around Harrisonburg, like my first mountain biking experience on the western slope of Massanutten, my first underground caving experience, or my unforgettable hike to the historic High Knob Fire Tower in the George Washington National Forest, with 360-degree views at the top. The Harrisonburg Rockingham Trail Guide introduces a collection of 15 trips and trails, from stunning mountain climbs to peaceful wooded pathways. Each page includes a map and description of the trail, as well as distance, difficulty, and special considerations. The clickable map on Visit Harrisonburg's website is user-friendly and made my last adventure super easy to plan. Harrisonburg has everything to satisfy my adventure-loving spirit, plus all the cuisine, entertainment, museums, and attractions you would expect from an award-winning Main Street community. No wonder Harrisonburg is friendly by nature. Start planning your adventure by clicking on Visit Harrisonburg in the show notes of your listening app. And then the last thing I'll share about what happened this summer was we unexpectedly had to say goodbye to my cat, Blanche. If you follow me on social media, you definitely know Blanche. She was a purebred, all-white Persian, so think long fur, flat face. And she looked like this little puffy cloud or like a cotton ball that was adorable, except that she was 100% attitude, and she made you work for her respect. She was a little firecracker, and I just adored her. We adopted her and another cat, Sophia. So Blanche and Sophia came together 7 years ago, and we named them Blanche and Sophia because they were already little old ladies back then. They're our golden girls. We always adopt seniors. I have a soft spot in my heart for senior pets because most of them end up homeless through no fault of their own. And in the case of Blanche and Sophia, their former owner passed away of cancer unexpectedly, like in her 50s. And then they needed a home. So we brought them home. Blanche has always been my little adventure buddy. She used to travel with me around Virginia if I was staying in a state park cabin or a pet-friendly room. She was my yoga buddy. She had better gear than I had. She had more tents than I had. She had a better hammock than I had. And her favorite toy was this fly fishing rod. So I like to say she was better at fly fishing than me because I never caught anything and she caught that thing all the time. But it's been a rough adjustment without her. Right around the time that we were doing all the house renovations and we had guests in the house, she started to act like she wasn't quite feeling well. And we thought maybe it was just all the commotion in the house that she didn't like. But even after everybody was gone and things were quiet, she didn't quite go back to her usual self. And so I took her into the vet, and after a couple of visits, we discovered 2 tumors in her chest. And by the time we made that discovery, it was too late to do anything about it. So my biggest concern was that she didn't suffer. And so she passed away peacefully at home very recently. And that has been really, really tough. I think anytime you lose a pet, I think it's tough. You know, they're so ingrained in our daily lives and routines. But losing the last one, I think, is a really hard adjustment. As somebody who adopts senior pets often and goes through this cycle relatively often compared to other folks. When you lose a pet, but you still have other pets in the house, the adjustment isn't so drastic. But when you lose the last one, then you're putting away the food and the water dishes, you're emptying the litter boxes, you're putting away the toys and supplies, returning unopened cat food cans to the store. I guess there's a sense of finality is what I'm trying to say. And I'm sure we will adopt again. I just don't know when. And definitely missing her. But I've been very grateful for the time off, the time away from the podcast and the social media, especially because it meant that I got to spend time with her before she passed and got to take some time for the grieving process after she was gone. Between losing Blanche and spending time with my family who was here from overseas and getting my house projects done and some other organizational projects, and it's been incredible not having to stress about what am I going to post on social today. So I really appreciate all of you for giving me that break. I know I definitely got messages from people saying, hey, where are you? Haven't seen anything, posted it in a while. And I did post that I was taking a break, but I understand that can be easy to miss. But I do need your help kind of getting the train up and going again, because social media, the more you post, the more the algorithm pushes your posts out, the more attention your accounts get. And because I haven't posted in a while, I know that getting it going again is going to take some effort. And you all could really help me out in that regard. If you could, comment and like and share and all the things that all the creators always ask you to do. We ask for a reason, and that is to help make our content more discoverable to new people and to sort of get the ball rolling. So I would appreciate you all doing that as season 5 gets up and going again. For the second year in a row, I've teamed up with River Rock Outfitter to offer one lucky listener a $50 gift card to their store in exchange for your feedback on my listener survey. The survey takes about 6 minutes to complete, and the information that you provide for me on that survey is really important to me because it helps me create content and make decisions about season 5 and new episodes. So if you could head on over to your show notes right now in your listening app and click on Take the Listener Survey, that will take you directly to the survey. And at the end, you just fill out your information if you want to be entered in the drawing for the $50 gift card. So what's coming up in season 5? Well, I just got back from Breaks Interstate Park not too long ago, where I was meeting with Tyler Mullins, who's going to be the guest on the first episode of the new season. Tyler and I talk about many different hiking trails at the Breaks, but also we talk about a relatively new long distance hiking trail in the area called the Pine Mountain Trail. It's going to stretch all the way to Cumberland Gap when it's finally complete. Tyler and I hiked a section of that together. It's the section of trail that shares a parking lot with Birch Knob Fire Tower, which has some epic views if you've never been there. Tune into that episode because you're going to hear about the hiking opportunities in the area. And then also last season, I started a new series called Virginia's Adventure Towns. If you remember, these episodes focus on a particular town in Virginia and include not only all of the outdoor recreation opportunities, but also lodging, dining, and attractions. And all those episodes contain all of the links and resources that you need to plan a trip to that town. So last season I did the town of St. Paul in Appalachia. There was an episode about Farmville in Central Virginia. And then there was also an episode about Urbana, which is a coastal town. And this season, we're going to be kicking it off with an episode about Onancock on the Eastern Shore. The other episodes are still being worked out. Virginia's Adventure Towns was really popular last season. And so you can expect at least a handful more of those in season 5. And then you may have seen me post on social media. There's going to be an episode about Virginia's snakes and trail safety in regard to snakes. And so I was asking folks to send me their questions about snakes, and I got some really interesting ones. Thank you for everyone who sent those in. It's not too late to send me your questions about snakes. And so I guess this is probably a good time to segue into a new feature that I have this season, which is called Fan Mail. By clicking on the fan mail link in your show notes, you can actually send me a text message. So if you check the show notes of every episode, there is a link called Send Me a Text Message. And from this link, you can send me whatever you want to tell me, which is great because as you're listening to episodes, as you have questions about the content or for the guest or for me, you can click that link without having to search for it and without having to hop off the platform. So in the past, if you wanted to get in touch with me, you either had to email me or send me a message on social media, but now you can do that just by clicking the link in your show notes and not have to hop off your podcast listening app. And in these solo episodes, I'll be responding to questions that I receive or comments, and also be asking you questions and looking for your feedback so you can send me that feedback by clicking that link in your show notes. Something else that is new this year, there are new membership categories on Buy Me a Coffee. And this came out of a request that I received from somebody who said that he wanted to be able to contribute more on a membership level. And it's not the first time that I've gotten that request. So I created some new membership levels. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this, Buy Me a Coffee is a platform where listeners like you can support the show by contributing. I recently added up all the production costs on a monthly basis, all the different subscriptions and services that I have in order to create a quality podcast. And it adds up to about $850 a month. And so the contributions that I receive on Buy Me a Coffee go a long way towards helping to defray those costs and enable me to continue making this podcast. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody who has ever contributed. And now there are new membership levels. So the new membership levels include new perks as well. So some of those perks are exclusive offers from my sponsors, discounts in my merch store, and then I'm also starting a virtual happy hour event where there will be guest speakers, but then also just some time with me where we can have a conversation. You can ask me questions. We can talk about whatever you want. And then members will also continue to receive the former perks, which include receiving vinyl stickers and a full list of links and resources from every episode sent directly to your inbox. And of course, a shout out on the show. So if you're enjoying Virginia Outdoor Adventures, please consider supporting me. You can hit pause on your podcast player right now, go to your show notes and click on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a virtual coffee or sign up for one of the 3 membership levels. And I would love to say thank you to the newest members of Virginia Outdoor Adventures, and that includes Kelly from Broadway, Jacob from Warsaw, Laura from Ocean Pines, Glenn and Susanna from Bent Mountain, Tim from Palmyra, Stacy from Lynchburg, Mary from Bristow, Kevin from Henrico, John from Alexandria, Angela from Williamsburg, Karen from Broadlands, Ryan from Holly Springs, Donna from Danville, Christina from Alexandria, and Michelle from Newport News. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support. One other shout out I wanted to give is to Todd Olson, who has been a listener of this podcast since the beginning, I believe, definitely sometime season 1, maybe even the first episode. Todd learned about Virginia State Parks Trail Quest by listening to this podcast. And as soon as he learned about it, he immediately signed up and has been taking his family around the state to visit all the state parks and, of course, checking them off as a part of Trail Quest. And this past summer, they completed Trail Quest at Pocahontas State Park. And Todd invited me to their Master Hiker ceremony where they were presented with their Master Hiker certificates and pins. It is not the first time that someone has invited me to their Master Hiker ceremony. And I am so touched every time that somebody reaches out and lets me know that they are completing Trail Quest and that it was a magnificent journey that they learned about on this podcast and invite me to be a part of it. So congratulations to Todd and your family. You can see pictures that I took of Todd and his wife and his 2 young kids, not only on my social media accounts, but if you go to Virginia State Parks, I believe there's some photos of them at Pocahontas with the ranger there too. I think we're getting close to time to wrap this up, but before I hop off, I want to share some upcoming events where you can meet me in person if you'd like. I will just start off by saying that all these events are tentatively on my calendar. I'm recording this like 2 months in advance of some of the later dates here, so anything could change. If you are coming out to an event that I mentioned here because you're wanting to meet me, I would highly suggest you hit me up first before you come out to make sure that I'm going to be there, and stay tuned to my social media pages because I always announce when I'm going to be at a live event, so you can come meet me. Friday, the 11th of October and Saturday, the 12th, there is the Festival of Leaves in Front Royal. I've actually never been to this festival, but I hear it's pretty big and pretty cool. So that'll be my first time at that event and would love to see you out there. And then Go Fest in Roanoke is October 18th through the 20th. That's a huge outdoor festival. I was there last year, but I was at the tent with Virginia State Parks. And this year, I believe, if it all works out, that I'm going to have my own booth. Again, I will update you if anything changes, but I should be there either way. And then the last event on the calendar at the moment is the Wine and Arts Festival at Caledon State Park. This is another one of the festivals that I have been wanting to attend for years, but have just never made it. I heard it's excellent, and I've also heard it's really well attended. So come on out to Caledon State Park. It's November 2 and 3. And if you're having trouble finding me, look for the Virginia State Parks tent because we're going to be neighbors during this festival. I'm going to be set up right next door to them. Hope to see you there. The next giveaway is a celebratory giveaway. This trailer episode is the 60th episode of Virginia Outdoor Adventures. So to celebrate that milestone, as well as the launch of season 5, I'm giving away some merch. I've got a Virginia Outdoor Adventures tee, as well as some really cool stickers. So to be entered into that giveaway, you just need to share this podcast in your social media feed. And don't forget to tag me so that I can see that you shared it. That would be one entry into the giveaway. And then if you would like to earn additional entries, you just need to tag your friends on your post. So each additional tag will be an additional entry into the giveaway. Now, how do you share a podcast on social media? Well, there's a couple different ways. You could tap the share button in your podcast listening app right now, and a couple of different options will pop up. Or you could simply just take a screenshot of your phone if you're listening on your phone right now and share that image. We are almost at the end of this trailer, and I'm realizing that I don't even have time to share the thing I really wanted to share most, which was how I pack for a cabin or campsite stay, especially in a state park. And I'll just give you the little backstory. So back in August, I was at Pocahontas. And if you have been listening to this podcast, then you heard the 2 episodes this past spring. One of them was about Virginia State Park's Let's Go Adventures program with Rangers Diego and Sarah. And there was another episode about Paddle Quest with Ranger Sammy. Well, all 3 of them were at Pocahontas this past August for the Let's Go kayaking program. It was a 2-day instructional course, and I had signed up for it. And after the end of the last day, we were kind of all hanging out and just, being social and chit-chatty. And all of them travel around the state to different parks for the programming that they supply. And of course, I also travel around the state and stay in parks frequently. So we were just having this little conversation about how we have bags pre-packed all the time, that we don't even bother unpacking when we get home. It's just like our cabin stay bag and our campground stay bag. And everything that we could possibly need are just in these bags, and we just grab the bag and go. Well, we were comparing notes on what we have in the bags, and it turns out my bags are much more substantial than anybody else's. And Sarah said, you could totally do an entire podcast episode just on what you pack for cabin and campground stays. And now that I'm doing these solo episodes, I do have a space for something like that, but not in this episode, unfortunately, because I'm out of time. So I guess that'll just have to serve as a little bit of a teaser for the next one. But in the meantime, do send me a text message. Go to your show notes, click on send me a text message, and let me know, well, one of a few things. First of all, what did you think about this solo episode? And would you like to hear more? To be clear, I am not getting rid of my guest format. All of my other episodes are still going to have guests, and the solo episodes are going to be like maybe every third, or who knows. It'll be sprinkled in there. It just depends on how I can make the production schedule work. But I want to do more of these. But first, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this? Is there value in this? Would you like to hear more? You can also send me your questions about snakes for the upcoming episode about snakes and trail safety. Lastly, if you've got your own bags that you pack or tips for packing for a cabin or a campsite stay, I'd love to hear what you all bring with you, because maybe it's something that's not in my bag that I need to add. So let me know, and I will be signing off here. Don't forget, the first episode of season 2 is coming out at the beginning of October. That's going to be about hiking at Breaks Park and the Pine Mountain Trail, and that will be available anywhere you listen to podcasts. So until then, friends, adventure on. Virginia Outdoor Adventures is inspired by and supported by listeners like you, which is why your messages and feedback mean so much to me. You can text me directly by clicking on Send Me a Text Message in your show notes. I answer questions, respond to comments, and share your feedback on the show. Never miss an update. Get even more information and inspiration by signing up for my newsletter. Click on Newsletter Sign Up in your show notes or visit virginiaoutdooradventures.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adventure on.